Do you need to create a brand that has visual impact and communicate your vision to other people? In this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that by creating what's called a stylescape. Now before we get started, you can actually go to my website and download the Illustrator file that I will be using for free. You can go to brycetufts.com, go under the Resources tab, you can download the Illustrator file there. Alongside that, you'll find dozens of other resources including workbooks, worksheets, and guides to help you along your branding journey. So first off, what is a stylescape? A stylescape is an answer to a long-time design problem, which is how do we go from thinking and talking about design to actually creating design? So many people make the mistake of starting their brand's design with their logo, their website, or their business card. The problem with doing that is now you've only defined one small fragment of your brand. Now the rest of your touch points are going to have to draw inspiration from that and catch up. What if a year later, after you put all this effort into your design, you realize that it doesn't resonate with you and it doesn't resonate with your audience? Now the real power of a stylescape is that it takes us a year into the future so that we can see what our brand looks like after it's completed. Now we can ask ourselves questions like, is this stylescape working and do I need to change anything? By instead starting with a wide view of our brand, we can identify common elements and themes between each of our touch points, helping our brand to be consistent and familiar. Now it's important to note that stylescapes are primarily used as an internal tool to help us along with our process. In order to create the stylescape, we're going to need to go and gather images and references from other brands in order to inspire the future look and feel of our brand. Now you might think that I'm asking you to go steal or copy other people's work and ideas, but that's not our goal. By curating design that has worked for other brands trying to reach similar goals, we're actually doing three things right. First, we're saving ourselves time and exploring concepts that might not be effective. Second, we're meeting the audience with what they expect to see. If it's familiar to them, they'll trust it more. Third, we're giving ourselves the opportunity to innovate and create something new. We're agreeing to what's already out there and then putting our own twist on it. So, how do we start creating a stylescape? Well, the first thing we'll need to do is gather our images. I do this by creating image buckets or folders that contain different mediums that the brand could be expressed through. Now we'll jump into the design process and I'll show you how I design a stylescape. So if you've been following along with the series so far, you'll know that I created a fictional helmet company to give you context while walking through the whole branding process. So you'll be able to see how I pull and edit these images in order to create the brand that I'm trying to build. So first things first, I'm going to walk you through my image buckets. I'm going to show you the things that I was inspired by and the references that I pulled in order to create the stylescape. And if we go under the images tab right here, you can see the different buckets that I fill with images and references. So the first of these buckets is architecture, environments, and interiors. If we flip through these images, you can see the common themes that I was kind of focusing this brand around when I was selecting them. Now next up is the collateral bucket. So these are different touch points that I was inspired by. So inside of here, you'll see business cards, you'll see different print materials, you'll see the product box designs that I was inspired by, websites, print ads, magazine covers. These are all things that I feel represent the brand in some sort of way, and I'm gonna pull elements of when I'm creating the stylescape. Now the next bucket is colors. So if we look inside of here, you can see some color palettes that were inspired by what we looked at in the last videos. A dark navy blue, some goldish orange yellows, and some blacks and whites for heavy contrast. Underneath the furniture bucket, you'll see that I gathered some leather furniture with some brick accent walls, usually really dark. When I'm creating this folder, I'm really asking myself, if we had an office space, what would that look like? What kind of furniture would I select? What kind of materials would I select? And creating the bucket based off of that. So here I collected some icons that I felt reflected the high-end nature of what I was trying to create. You can see there's a lot of line work. They're simple, they're sharp. I thought they worked really well. The next bucket is probably one of the most important, and that's people and lifestyle photography. I was able to find a lot here. You can see that I've been focusing on people with leather jackets, kind of living this elevated lifestyle. The main thing that I'm focusing on with these people is their demeanor, what they're wearing, how they present themselves, and gathering a bucket of images based off of that. The next bucket would be photography. So this is specific shots that I've pulled that I feel like would be used in the final brand. You can see a lot of product shots have been pulled. This photo in particular, I really liked. So these are photos that if I hired a photographer for our brand, I would show them to try to recreate. Now the next bucket is textures and fabrics. So if we look through here, we can see some different textures I've pulled. There's a lot of shadows, concrete, denim, leather. I even pulled some street elements and money textures. In particular, I've pulled some pretty fancy leather textures here. This one is a personal favorite. I really like that stitching. I also pulled some dark wood textures. I really like the brushed concrete look of this with the faded text. As we flip through, you can see the type of brand that I'm trying to curate through these textures. These are different words and logos that stood out to me as fitting my brand's look. You can see that I've mostly gone with serif fonts that have some sort of special effect in between them. They look really unique and elevated. In particular, I pulled out this poster. I just really like the text treatment right here, and I feel like it fits with what we're trying to create. And lastly, we have Wayfinding and Signage. So basically, these are print elements that you would actually find physically in the world. I've tried to pull some that reflect the brand look that I'm trying to curate. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do here, after gathering our images, we're gonna go into the Design Files Here folder. And inside of here, we've put in our Stylescape Illustrator file. So if we open that up, you'll see the Stylescape template that I use and where I get started. So the first thing we wanna do is we wanna select a hero figure. So whoever represents our brand. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the People and Lifestyle tab, the image buckets that I selected. I'm gonna look for images inside of this bucket that have people that I feel represent the brand. Now the hero shot's gonna be the focal point of the Stylescape, so we really wanna make sure we get this right. So you can see I've pulled these images into a separate folder. I actually have 4 of them that I'm trying to decide between, so let's take a look. So I really like this guy. I like his demeanor. He obviously has an outfit and he's trying to present himself in a way that matches our brand. I like that he's smiling just a little bit. He's not over the top with it. It's also a high quality image if we zoom in. So this will work really well if we cut this out and put it as the largest piece of our Stylescape. So after we've got our character selected, we're gonna open him up in Photoshop and I'm gonna start to cut him out. There's a lot of methods to cutting people out. I'm actually gonna use the pen tool just because I think it's more accurate and we're really looking for quality on this cutout, seeing that it's gonna be the focal point. So just a tip while you're cutting out, try to put the pen line a little bit into the object that you're trying to cut out. This is because when we do the cutout, we're gonna put a little bit of a feather on it to make it look realistic. And you want that feather to only show the side of the object. You don't want it to show any of this background environment. All right, so another tip, once you have the cutout completed, you're gonna wanna feather this. I usually feather it by 1 or 2 pixels. I'm gonna do 1 pixel today, just see how that works. Once you feathered it, I just go down, hit the mask button, and we have our cutout. All right, so now that we've got our cutout down, I'm going to place it inside of the Stylescape. So he's gonna rest and be a size that makes it so he's the first thing we see once we open up the Stylescape. So I'll probably make him about this size. This may change, but we'll leave him here. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to section out the Stylescape and just create a rough idea of what this is gonna look like. So now that we've got the Stylescape structured out, we're going to start dropping in some elements. I usually start with the collateral, so I'll bring in maybe a web design, some of the print designs, move on to some logo and graphic pieces. Really, this is gonna be pretty loose. We're just gonna kind of get in a creative flow, start dropping in assets and elements, moving them around, seeing what works well with each other, and we'll start to refine it later once we've hit a point where we feel like the basic structure is there. All right, so at this point I've got a layout that's really working for me. I've placed in images and textures and laid them out in a way that presents all of the different uses of the brand, but also work together in a way I feel brings it to life. If we zoom in, we can see I've pulled textures, I've laid out the color palette that I selected, mocked up a quick website with some of the images we pulled together physical materials over here, laid in some textures. We have our hero image right here with some signage behind him. And then lastly, we have some lifestyle shots. Next thing we have to do is we have to start thinking about graphics. So what are the fonts gonna be? We have to start including some of those icons, and we have to start dropping in some vector effects. So the first thing we're gonna do is mock up a little logo over here. We're also gonna choose some fonts and try to lay out some hierarchies and hide them throughout the Stylescape. And the way that I like to do this is I go to Adobe Fonts and I start looking through their libraries. So the Adobe Fonts library has a good search feature. So I'm gonna be looking for serif fonts. So I can click the serif button right here. I can look for the specific weight I'm looking for. Then I can further identify what I want my font to look like. So I want a pretty high contrast. I want a medium width. I want a medium weight. And these things I'm not as concerned about. These elements I'm not as concerned about. So as I scroll through here, I see Adobe text. I actually really like this one. I'm gonna pop into here and activate it. So with the font now activated, I can highlight my text, type in the font, and once it pops up, I can select it, and now I have it set. So the next thing I'm gonna do is do some font exploration, see what kind of hierarchies I like, and then start dropping them into the Stylescape. An important note that you should take into consideration about this logo is this is not your final logo. What you're trying to do here isn't create your final logo. What you're trying to do is create something that can work in its place for now that's in the style of the final logo. From the references I pulled, I'm guessing that my final logo is probably going to have high contrast, be a serif font, and have some sort of little effect that garnishes it. I've also dropped in our tagline from our naming session that we did a few videos back. If you want to learn more about that, please watch that video. So now that we have our fonts and our logo chosen, the next thing we're going to do is drop the fonts throughout the Stylescape using some messaging that we've developed. So likewise, we also developed some messaging a couple videos back. If you want to learn more about that, please watch that video. Now lastly, I just want to go through the Stylescape and explain what we did and why each of the things that we added is going to help us in the future with our touch points. So if we look at our finalized Stylescape, what we want to do is we want to present the logo in a way that we're going to look to present our logo in the future. And I've presented it in the gold color with a tagline below it. This is not the final version of the logo, but it is how I'd like to have it presented. You can also see that I pulled the 3D render of the helmet right here that I want to be referenced when we're doing our own 3D renders. Now, as we scroll across, the first thing you're going to see is how our content lives on a digital space. So I went through and I combined a lot of elements that I felt worked for this brand. Now, this isn't even close to what our final website is going to look like, but there's a lot of details that we can find in this that I would like to be incorporated into our final designs. As we scroll over, we'll see how our content lives in a physical space. So we're looking at business cards, we're looking at print ads, we're looking at print materials, we're looking at our packaging. All of these contain details that I would like to be heavily referenced when we are designing our touch points. Up above here, you'll also see the icons section. Now, I included two types of icons that I felt would work for this brand. On the left, these are more UI elements, so things that would accompany our website, any apps that we do. And on the right are lifestyle elements. So this was probably what would make it to print products or social media posts, anything that we're doing to promote the lifestyle. As we scroll over, we can see our focus image. We can see how I see our text layout being in the future, and you can also see some textures I've included in the background that I like for the brand. Now, as we get into this section, I like to think about this as what is the user experience like. So everything that we see here is the physical materials that they're going to be coming into contact with. You can also see that I've put the focus on promoting a lifestyle rather than digital or physical products. And I've also put an emphasis here on including the messaging wherever I can. So the big question to ask ourselves once we've completed the Stylescape is, does the Stylescape have enough information to guide us forward when we're developing our touch points? The answer to this question is going to vary per organization. Some organizations might not need this packaging design, and some organizations might exist entirely on the web. What you show in your Stylescape should reflect what the future touch points are going to be. Now, if I look at this Stylescape, I would say that it is successful in cultivating the brand that I envisioned in my head. I also feel comfortable using this as a tool to show people that are going to be designing my brand what I want it to look like. So by putting this into a visual format, we've really saved ourselves a lot of time and effort trying to explain this to somebody and having to police our brand to make sure that it fits our vision. And with that, we have finished our brand Stylescape. If this video was helpful to you, please leave a like, and if you have any questions about the brand design process, please leave them as a comment below. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I have a library of free resources on my website, brycetufts.com, under the Resources tab. You can download any of them. There's workbooks, worksheets, there's guides, anything to help you along your brand design process. Also, like I said before, this is video 7 in a series that I'm doing where I create a brand from the ground up and walk you through the process. If you'd like to see more of that process, please subscribe to the channel so you can be notified when I post another video. Thank you for watching this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.